Hello and welcome to Talk of the Bay. I'm Len Beyea, and today I am very pleased to have candidates for Mayor of Santa Cruz here in the studio with us, and I will be moderating a forum here. We'll be asking some prepared questions. We're allowing candidates time to make their own introductory statements and their own closing statements, and in between that we'll be asking some questions. Well, I want to welcome our mayoral candidates. Thank you all so much for being here. With us today are Ryan Coonerty, Chris Krohn, Ami Chen-Mills, Joy Schendeldecker, and Gillian Greensite. And first, I want to very quickly give you the ground rules for what we're doing. And once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and invite you to make an introductory statement, give a little background about yourself or whatever you had chosen to use for that. Graham here will be keeping time for how long each little bit is. I'm sorry, we only have our 58 minutes of show time, and so because of that, we have to limit your time to answer questions. And I have to say, I started off with 11 questions. I've shrank it down to 4 because of the time limit. So hopefully we actually get to all 4 of them. But the main thing is I want to start by giving you an opportunity to make your opening questions. Your opening statement, you get a minute. Your closing statement, 2 minutes, 90 seconds. Most of the questions will be 90 seconds. If there are any less than that, I'll let you know. That I think there's one that's fairly simple to answer and maybe less. Secondly, the order on each question, on each thing, has been generated by my random number generator in Excel. So I'm going to ask you in different order each time, just so that you're not always the last person or the first person or the middle person. And finally, I just want to request that there be no personal attacks. I mean, it's one thing to mention, this other candidate said X. If that's accurate, hopefully they don't have to rebut you, and you can say something about that. But I don't want anything like, well, so-and-so is in bed with these terrible special interests, and none of that. If you do that, I'll turn off your microphone. So I hope that's clear, and you'll have questions. So I'm going to start simply right now with opening statements. And Ryan Coonerty, I invite you to go first.
How much time do we have, Len?
You have a minute for these opening statements.
All right. First of all, thank you for holding this debate. Thank you to all the listeners for caring about your city. My name is Ryan Coonerty. I'm running for mayor of Santa Cruz. I'm doing so because I believe that we are at a critical moment in our community. When I knock on doors, I hear that people love and care and feel lucky to live in this community, but they're also frustrated. They're frustrated by homelessness. They're frustrated by vacant storefronts. They're frustrated by developments that overwhelm neighborhoods. And they're frustrated by the basics, medians not being kept up, things getting more expensive. I'm running for mayor because I believe that my experience, first having been born and raised here, then serving on the city council as mayor, then on the board of supervisors, starting companies, working for nonprofits, collaborating, can get people the results that they want and need for our amazing community. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Krohn.
Thank you, Len. Thank you for inviting us. My name is Chris Krohn, and I'm running for to be mayor of Santa Cruz. I'm a 43-year resident. I raised my 2 daughters here. I was elected to the city council twice, and I was mayor in 2002. I'm running for mayor because I got inspired by Zoran Mandani in New York City and his vision. And what's the art of the possible, really? And secondly, because Santa Cruz has been put up for sale by the current mayor and city council. And thirdly, because environmental protection has become a euphemism instead of everyday policy here. And fourth, I'm running for mayor to call out the record of the frontrunner in this race. And I hope tonight's discussion will shed some light on that.
Ami Chen-Mills.
Hi, and thank you so much for having us also. My name is Ami Chen-Mills. I've been a resiliency coach and educator for 30 years. I worked for the Santa Clara County Department of Alcohol and Drug Services for 6 years in county jails, juvenile hall, youth correctional ranches, and schools before founding a nonprofit to do the same resiliency work nationally. I'm also an activist for climate and democracy and a tireless advocate who co-founded the Get the Flock Out campaign in our city to get surveillance cameras used by ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, as well as corrupt out-of-state cops and peeping Tom flock employees out of Santa Cruz. I am an elected member of the Santa Cruz County Democratic Central Committee, District 3. I was appointed to the city's Homelessness Committee and elected to the Westlake School Site Council. I'm going to have to skip a lot of my background, but I will say that I am running because I believe that a machine has been built in politics in Santa Cruz County, and we need to start to break that machine up. I think I will offer a fresh voice who can also bridge perspectives on the council, and I don't come with any special interest. Thank you.
All right, Joy Schendeldecker.
Hi, thanks, Len, and hello to all of our listeners. I'm Joy Schendeldecker, an organizer and shelter worker here in Santa Cruz, where I'm on the front lines of the systems most impacted by our housing crisis. I'm running for mayor because too many people, students, workers, longtime residents, are being pushed out of this city. My campaign is focused on 3 things: keeping people housed, supporting workers, and building a city people can actually afford. This means building more housing and preserving the affordability we still have, investing in good jobs and the public workforce that keeps this city running, and making sure our systems are a solid foundation in people's lives. I bring both frontline experience and a focus on implementation, how we take good ideas and make them real. That's the kind of leadership I'm here to offer.
Thank you. And Gillian Greensite.
Yes, thank you so much. And Gillian Greensite, I'm running for mayor. I'm originally from Australia and have lived in the city for 51 years. And for about 45 of those years, I've been on the public side of the podium, trying to save heritage trees, trying to get the city to respond better to those who report rape in the city, environmental issues, developments that were violating our stream ordinance, trying to protect the wharf from being turned into Pier 39, and not successfully in some cases, but from the public side of the podium, I don't think the public is really having the impact from the concerns that are raised. I'm concerned about overbuilding. I don't think it's going to lead to lower rents. I see our local long-time workers moving out of the city. I would like to be in a position to work with the rest of the council to make a difference.
Thank you. Right, here's your first question. California state law requires each municipality to enable the development of an allocation of housing units through zoning rules and general plans to fulfill what's known as the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA. The most recent RHNA allocated 3,736 housing units at specific affordability levels to accommodate what they consider the city's projected housing needs. The zoning we had in place as of the end of 2023 would have accommodated that number, but would have distributed some of that new housing to areas like the West Side, to Mission Street, to Soquel Avenue, on the East Side and Water Street. The current council voted last year to expand the downtown district to include most of the area between Laurel Street and Beach Hill, what's generally referred to as the south of Laurel neighborhood, increasing height limits and density allowances for that neighborhood. Do you support that decision? And if not, how best do you think new higher density development should be distributed around the city? And I'm going to start with you, Gillian Greensite.
Thank you. Well, first of all of the streets you mentioned, the main corridors, are having 6- and 8-story buildings built there. It's not just south of Laurel. South of Laurel has been added to that mix. My main concern is that in the last RHNA cycle, the city approved the building of 8, double the required number. Already in this cycle, there are over 4,000 housing units lined up for permits at City Hall. Our allocation is 3,700. We're going too fast, and I don't think the impacts on our infrastructure, the cost of city services, and the maintaining rents at a high level is being adequately scrutinised or assessed, and I haven't seen any acknowledgement of that on our current city council. It's as though we have to build, we need more housing. There is quite a bit of research, good research, that shows that you build more, you raise the area median income when people with high incomes come in, that drives out our local workers. None of that is being tracked. I see it every day. I'd like to see something done about that.
Ryan Coonerty, I'll ask you to respond to that.
I mean, I think we made a decision as a community a long time ago to build the Greenbelt and to protect and prevent sprawl, and that was an amazing decision made by a generation before. And that means that instead of growing out, we need to grow up. I do agree that the best place for that growth is downtown. I believe that the buildings could be better designed and more beautiful. I also know that 60% of the units that have gone up are affordable, deed restricted affordable, and so make a big difference to the families that have moved in there and will move in there. Having said that, I think the second part of your question is exactly right, which is I believe the agreement with the community was that we would focus most of the development, not all of it, but most of it, into the downtown and not into neighborhoods. And I think we need to push back a lot harder on some of these unreasonable developments that are going in along the corridors that have no setbacks, no parking, and just a disproportionate impact on existing neighborhoods.
Thank you. Chris Krohn.
Thank you, Len. I was walking in neighborhood yesterday, Market Street, Hubbard, Glenwood, that neighborhood. And so people are very concerned about the demolition of all those buildings that took place from Water Street to Mary Ann's. It's now become a magnet for folks to hang out, for dumping stuff. One voter even said that she's afraid to walk down that street right now, May Avenue. So, I mean, that's another part of this, another dimension of this development thing. I am not in favor of overwhelming neighborhoods. I think there's plenty of places to build before you start building in places like all the corridors. I agree with the sentiment that downtown is the appropriate place to build, but 8-story or even more buildings I don't think is appropriate. I think more like 3- and 4-story buildings, and I think we should exhaust those sites. Dick Wilson, the former city manager, would always tell me, "Oh, we're built out, Chris." Well, we can build up a bit, even though we're built out. And I agree with the sentiment of Ryan that I'm glad to have the green belts, and I want to maintain those green belts. And also, I'm glad to hear Ryan talking about development, that you're hearing that at the door, because that's what I'm hearing a lot about is the rampant development that's going on in Santa Cruz right now.
Thank you. Joy Schendeldecker.
Thanks. I've been a big critic of the South of Laurel plan since it was proposed. I talked a lot about it in my campaign in 2022. I actually disagree that part of downtown is the best place to make very, very dense and tall. It is a currently more affordable neighborhood that could use investment for sure. It's also in a tsunami zone, in an earthquake liquefaction area. When we think about the decades to come, generations to come of climate chaos that's already begun, I don't think it's responsible to build quite tall buildings in that area that are going to need a lot of extra fortification and the use of round-the-clock pumps to keep their lower levels, whether it's parking or basements or foundations, from being inundated. So, and I also think there are some access issues for that area in terms of traffic. I do actually think that we should be spreading out our growth to other neighborhoods. I think the West Side should be more of a mixed neighborhood. I think all of our neighborhoods should be mixed income and demographically mixed.
Thank you. Ami Chen-Mills, same question.
Well, if anyone can handle talking about this anymore with 5 candidates, I will say that I'm concerned about south of Laurel for a number of reasons. One of which is that there are a lot of Section 8 renters in south of Laurel already. And so if we actually start building a lot of really tall buildings really fast, or a lot of dense buildings really fast, that is going to accelerate gentrification. That's been shown in studies. And already developers are getting bonuses to move affordable housing out of south of Laurel so they can build market rate only in south of Laurel. And it is healthier for societies to have mixed income people living together. It's better for people who have less money to be around people who have more money, because somehow they get more inspiration and there's more shared resource happening in those areas. I also think we should move over into the west side, because if you think about people always complaining about students and where students are going to live and traffic, if you build on the west side, then you have students who can take the bus up Western straight to the university. And there are a number of empty lots on the west side that are now zoned industrial. I think we should look at that in terms of zoning for multifamily housing and mixed zoning purposes. And I think it's also more equitable to build not just downtown but throughout the city, as well as the traffic impacts in south of Laurel, because that's a huge tourist area, going to the boardwalk, going to the wharf, and I'm afraid that there will be a lot of traffic impacts in that neighborhood. On the west side, I'm a west side resident. I'm okay with adding a little bit of traffic on the west side, and I think my time is up. Yeah? Thank you so much.
Thank you. For listeners who may just be tuning in to Talk of the Bay here on KSQD, we have a forum here of all 5 candidates for mayor of the city of Santa Cruz. So here's the next question. This is also a land use and planning policy question. I think that's showing my bias as a former planner. So the state legislature has passed a number of laws since 2016 that effectively supersede the regulatory authority of cities and counties over local zoning. Among them are SB 9, SB 10, AB 2011, AB 2299. There are several others. Among other provisions, these laws allow significant density bonuses for developments that include affordable housing units or are located along transit corridors, ease restrictions on ADUs, allow up to 4 units on existing single-family parcels, and allow housing units to be integrated into commercial developments. How do you think the city should approach its planning and land use policies and zoning rules in the context of these overriding state laws? And I'm going to begin with you, Ami Chen-Mills.
Thank you so much. Well, first I want to say that just in terms of my focus on what the city can be doing with affordable housing in particular, I would really like to see more cooperative housing of the type of Coyote Crossing, of the type of the Tannery, of the type of Walnut Avenue Commons. I think we need to be building community, and I'd love, like in the circle, in the circle in the middle of the circles, that would have been the perfect place for like a cooperative development. And that's what we need in these very challenging times, is to be able to come together. As for the question, I support, like I just said, more equitable development across the city where there's less impact actually all concentrated in one place. So I support splitting parcels. I support easing restrictions on building ADUs. I was just talking to a voter today who told me he was so happy with the city. I have never heard this. He was so happy with city permitting around building ADUs that he was like gushing about how easy the process was. And that was the first time that I've heard that from a resident. And I support that because I think that's a way that we can house people throughout the city, and homeowners can actually rent out and be mom and pop landlords rather than Greystone owning Hilltop, where there are now rats and mold. And this is what happens when private equity comes in to start running our housing. As for the density bonuses, that's a tough one. I'm not sure how to get around that. I know the city's working on it because they're getting a lot of pushback now on development. Thank you.
Gillian Greensite, same question.
Yes, thank you. We shouldn't kid ourselves. The density bonuses from the state, imposed by the state, is what is allowing neighbourhoods that have 3- and 4-story zoning to get 6- and 8-story buildings. And the city isn't allowed to reduce the number of units. So any promises from any of us that we can really do something about that is a pipe dream. Same with parking. When they can get build with providing no parking, that's state law. that where we can make a difference is the fact that our city is going gung-ho to do more than we're required to do. The pace of building is too fast. As I said, there's 4,000 units, more than that, already on the books in the city website. You can check it yourself. And that's more than we're required to do in an 8-year period, and we're only 3 years into that 8 years. So I would say that if I were in the, on the council as mayor, I would be having discussions about just what are we doing here? What are our staff's priorities? When we're hearing from neighbours that they're hurting with the impacts, and we say we can do nothing, well, we can do something about the pace of this building. And that, I think, is an important thing to discuss.
Thank you. Next, Ryan Coonerty, please.
Yeah, I think the state legislature, as they often do, confuses actions with outcome. And in fact, the state is producing less housing units per year now than they were 10 years ago after introducing all this chaos into the system. I think they need to take a step back, see what's actually working, see how it's playing out, let planners and the community catch up. I believe that the city should make 2 arguments to the state legislature. The first argument is that those who are on pace and complying with their housing goals should get some local autonomy back to be able to have these developments fit our local character. If you're a good actor, it shouldn't only be sticks, there should also be carrots. The second thing is currently state housing RHNA numbers don't include student housing. Student housing is housing. People are sleeping in those beds, and if they're not sleeping in those beds, they're sleeping in houses in our community, apartments in our community. And so Santa Cruz is getting doubly hit, and it's really important that we recognize that we want to build all kinds of housing, which includes affordable, market rate, and student housing, and the state should stop punishing us for building the housing that can house the next generation of students at UCSC.
Thank you. Joy Schendeldecker.
Since we have had more than 150 years of exclusionary housing in our community, I do agree with the general principle that we need to eliminate that so that we have inclusionary zoning across the city. And some of our state laws have effectively done so. I don't disagree with that. I think that infill is a really great idea. I think many of our neighborhoods, most of our neighborhoods, in fact, have a certain amount of that already, and they're really sweet, like Cottage Mews and Library Lane and small apartment buildings. So I support that. I think we should continue it. I think that we should work on our objective standards process, but from a community-led stance rather than a city staff or consultant-led process. I think that if we do more work up front to make those objective standards something that we've really negotiated as a community, then we should have less pushback when we have projects at the neighborhood level. And I will say that even though technically areas like the South of Laurel project went through community processes, they weren't voted on by the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris Krohn.
Yeah, Len, I'm an organizer, and I went through the community studies program and learned a lot about how to get people together and get resolutions to happen. When I was on the city council previously, we did that around UC. When we brought some UC cities together, we talked about the problems. It's really amazing when you bring people together, you realize, wow, they have the same issues that we have. So I would provide a lot more pushback to the state government, or to the legislature and these kind of mandates that are coming down that we have to build. There are cities that are pushing back. Santa Monica, Los Angeles most recently. I would organize with those cities and get together and find out what they're doing and how they're dealing with these mandates from the state. I think building the ADUs, I think we should incentivize more ADUs. I see that as a future, just like I see electric bikes as the future. I see in this community accessory dwelling units as a future. I would have a town hall meeting and ask the people, what do you think we should be doing? Should we be just opening these floodgates? Again, I'm going to talk about the River Rose, 175 units. Most of them are luxury units that I toured the building, and 20 of them are affordable. So you have 155 unaffordable units. So a lot of this building boom is not for us, not for locals, not for Santa Cruz. It's going to bring in, I think they want a higher end and a different kind of electorate. Thank you.
All right. Next question is regarding housing. Housing prices in Santa Cruz, as we all know, have risen rapidly in the last 15 years especially. During that time, an increasing percentage of rental properties in Santa Cruz, as well as the rest of the country, have come under corporate ownership, often private equity firms that have been found to, on average, charge higher rents, invest less in property maintenance, and to more aggressively evict tenants if they get behind on rent or violate any provision of their lease. Do you think the city should play any role in trying to stabilize housing costs, limit absentee ownership, or protect renters? And if so, what policies would you support? And I'm going to start with you, Joy Schendeldecker.
Thank you. We need many, many more protections for our renters. They make up more than half of our city's residents, and they are seriously burdened by their housing costs. Many people paying up to 70% of their wages in housing costs. It's unacceptable. We have state rent control law that is weak and excludes a lot of our housing stock. That's something that I would like to push back against at that state level and, see what we can do locally. I think that aside from doing what we can to increase rent control, have the tenant right to counsel, during COVID, we had a ban on evictions, an eviction moratorium. Let's do that. We are still in a housing crisis and still in a public health crisis and still in a crisis of racism as a public health crisis. It's not like our crises have gone away. Let's take those actions, and then let's start adding to our affordable housing trust fund through more rigorous wealth taxes, like increasing the real estate transfer tax, and then work on a community land trust so that we're buying our own land.
Don't tell the Supreme Court that racism is still a problem, still an issue.
Right.
I have some salty words for them.
Yes. All right, Gillian Greensite.
Yes, I think there's two main issues, two big forces, if you like, in this issue of the cost of housing. I think one of them you can't deny is the growth of UCSC. Years ago, it was studied and pointed out that every housing you built on the UCSC campus raises the rents across the whole student body, because the student body has to absorb that rent increase of the new building. They have to pay for it. There's no subsidy from the state. Therefore, growth is in and of itself raising the rents, because as the rents rise on campus, the downtown, half of the student body lives off campus. That's average across 30 years. And the downtown landlords raise their rents. And so university growth is rising the rents. The other force that's raising the rents is that we, with all our new building, the people moving in, I know this is separate from affordable housing, I'm not talking about that, but the people moving into the market rate housing have high incomes. That raises the area median income, and all of our affordable housing is tied to that. So those two big forces, we can't just pretend that we can solve this easily, but I would be putting a cap on university growth if I were in charge of that university and that system.
All right, thank you. Chris Krohn.
I think you're talking about housing displacement, Len, and I think that we have something in place called AB 1482, which does limit, the amount of rent of a rental increase, 5% plus cost of living. And I think a lot of folks don't know that. When I go around and talk to renters, they don't realize that is a law that's in place. And so I think we need to do a lot more to, publicize have a campaign. The city should be much more proactive in assisting renters with rental, with legal protections as well. I think we should fund a lot more, renters who go to court and, tenant legal protections. I also think that the city should be purchasing property and keeping those units affordable in perpetuity. That would be another way of ensuring the workforce has a place to live. And of course, as Gillian Greensite always so eruditely points out, that UCSC is not pulling its weight. And in fact, it is putting its weight on the rest of the community. And the next mayor needs to work with them on either providing housing or not bringing in more students.
Thank you. Ami Chen-Mills.
Well, first I'd want to say that I think as you're hearing from everyone, there are a lot of ideas out there. There's a lot of confusion about the building that's happening and tenant protections and the AMI and low income and affordable. And I really think, and I agree with Chris, that we need to have town halls in every district about certain topics. One of them needs to be about the RENA numbers and how we're meeting those and what affordable is. I think that tenants do need education about California's just cause eviction law and also its 5% rent increase max plus cost of living. A lot of tenants don't know about these things. The city needs to be educating them about these things and educating them about where they can live in affordable housing. Hats off to Gillian for helping to promote a local preference ordinance. I do want to say also that, I see a difference between what I call mom and pop landlords and Greystone that's managing Hilltop. Mm-hmm. And I get a lot of pushback from local landlords when I'm canvassing about how they feel about we're doing a really good job trying to keep rents low and taking care of our properties. They don't have a lot of cash flow necessarily. And so I think we need to consider that when we're thinking about new ordinances around who is renting. And I'm much more inclined to tax, like Greystone and these larger companies than I am, the mom and pop homeowners who are renting. And I've got to end there. But there's so much more to say.
Does anyone know if UC is paying taxes on Hilltop Apartments, or are they exempt because they're UC? That's just a question.
I do not know. Yeah. But let me give Ryan Coonerty a chance to answer the same question.
Yeah.
On housing.
Maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I was asked a question about what my biggest fear for Santa Cruz is, and I wrote it up for the Sentinel, which is that many people think it's, sea level rise or the unhoused population or whatever. And my biggest fear is, frankly, that we become Carmel, that we become a community of second, third, and fourth homes that you hollow out so you can't maintain schools in a fire district, you can't maintain local businesses because people are only there on weekends and maybe once a month. So I do worry about it. I do want to figure out a way that we can do it effectively to limit that impact. When I was on the Board of Supervisors, we limited Airbnb, ended up getting sued by them and fighting them in court in order to limit their impacts on neighborhoods. So I think we have to figure out how to address this issue. I will say that the vacancy rate 3 or 4 years ago was 0% and rents were rising. The vacancy rate is now 2%. That is not a healthy rental market, but it's more than not, and it's causing rents to flatline and maybe even soften. There's a lot of different reasons for that. You can't entirely credit the new development, and there's a lot of different reasons what that drives that. But I think we need to continue to look at policies to make it more affordable so that people can stay in the community and live, work, raise their kids, and retire all in the same place.
Thank you. For listeners who may just be tuning in to Talk of the Bay here on KSQD, we have all 5 candidates for Mayor of Santa Cruz here in the studio with us. And we've been asking the same questions of each candidate, and you've been hearing their responses. The next question, recently after holding some public hearings, the city terminated its contract with Flock for automatic license plate readers, which are positioned at many traffic intersections and just take pictures of people's license plates. Do you support the banning of license plate readers or not, and why? And I'll start with you, Ryan Coonerty.
Sure. So the action that the council took and that Amy should take credit for mobilizing the community was to cancel the contract with Flock and then also say that they were open to ALPR systems that didn't have the information sharing problems with a essentially a criminal federal government or other law enforcement agencies that don't share our values. That's what I agree with. I've said it a million times. That's the position I agree with. I believe that ALPRs can be a useful tool. I've heard from law enforcement, and often in all these forums, people talk about how we have to listen to the frontline workers and respond. And the frontline workers say it is helpful when there is an abducted child, a hit and run, other crimes in our city. But we cannot, under this current administration, have anything where that data can be accessed by federal agencies or aligned law enforcement agencies with that federal government.
Thank you. Joy Schendeldecker.
I don't support the use of ALPRs at all, frankly. I think that in the cost-benefit analysis, the cost to our civil rights, especially when these systems are owned, controlled by corporate entities, often tied to the military-industrial complex, it's just not worth the risk. Maybe if we developed some kind of publicly owned safety system, I think it's much, much, much outcome-oriented, positive outcome-oriented to invest in public safety that is grounded in care and outreach workers, healthcare systems that are robust, fully staffing our mobile emergency response team so that they can actually respond to calls in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Ami Chen-Mills.
Well, I guess I will take some credit here for founding the Get the Flock Out campaign throughout the county. There are still 38 cameras in Watsonville, for example, and 10 in Capitola, with more on the line. I absolutely do not support the installation of new automatic license plate readers. Not only do they take pictures of your license plate, they take pictures of your car. They take pictures of the people in the car. They'll take pictures of bicycles. And every day, these companies, whether it's Flock or whether it's Axon or some other company, are developing their artificial intelligence capacities within these cameras and these systems so that we are setting up a mass national surveillance state. Now, who's going to use that mass national surveillance network? It would be, at this time, the Trump administration. There are Republicans who don't want any administration to be using this kind of surveillance network. It's a violation of our constitutional rights, our Fourth Amendment rights, to be able to travel and to be only searched when there is a warrant, when we've committed some kind of a crime, and not just randomly by corrupt police officers, which has also happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Krohn.
I fully support the decision that the city council made, and I applaud them. That was what I would call a progressive political move, one that I have seen very few of in recent years, and I feel like they got some backbone, and that was a good move. In fact, one of the council members mentioned to a friend of mine that she's not getting endorsed by the police as a result of her vote on that. So I applaud the city council, and again, I'm against license plate readers for the same reasons that have come up. And I would like to see more of a discussion about transparency, because we're really talking about people who have access to information and other people who don't have access to that information, and then using that information to undermine somebody else. I mean, we know that the government uses a lot of information, and they collect a lot of information, and they use it for not always best of intentions. I would like to see less closed sessions in Santa Cruz, and I would also like to see no Zoom-only meetings for developers. Developers need to confront the public and have an open discussion.
All right. Gillian Greensite.
When I was on the civil grand jury for the 23-24 year, one of our guest speakers, as an aside, said that, well, you know that nearly all of the people on the January 6th insurrection on the Capitol who committed crimes were arrested because of license plate readers. So I left thinking, oh, that was a good thing, right? And then, of course, as I became educated with the Get the Flock movement and vote by council, I had a very different view. And so I support what the council voted on. I don't support the license plate readers, even if they can help in certain occasions to solve crimes. I think there are... I look at the crime of rape most closely, and I would say for that crime we could have better detective work and better police actions, so I wouldn't support any of this flock or substitute for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm aware that Ryan Coonerty has to leave for a 6 o'clock appointment very shortly, and I want to give you make sure you have an opportunity to make your closing statement. So I'm trying to balance the time here. It's about 5:42 right now. So if you feel like you're ready to make a closing statement, Ryan, I'm going to give you the go ahead to do that right now.
Sure. Yes, I apologize. I have to go give a midterm and lose 50 votes approximately from my students in so doing. But they are learning about the law of democracy, and so.
They're all registered. That would be great. You could register them.
Yeah. So I'll conclude by, again, thanking you for taking the time. Community-based information, whether it's a local bookstore, a local radio station, local newspapers, it makes all the difference in a democracy. I think one of the underlying currents that you've heard today is a frustration with so many things that are going on around the world and specifically at the federal level. And I believe that the best anecdote to that is us engaging at the local level, showing that progressive government can work, that we can fill vacant storefronts, create jobs, have a built environment that matches our beautiful natural environment, support our unhoused population and the community and reduce those impacts, build more affordable housing in a way that is congruent with the character of adjacent neighborhoods. These are not easy things to solve, as we've talked about. There are, all kinds of federal and state forces pushing back on us. But what I'm hearing as I go door to door is people want to engage. They want a government that is more transparent. I plan on creating dashboards to show the actual impacts of these policies in the community so that they can hold the government and their elected officials accountable. And I plan on moving, the council from just Tuesday afternoons and Tuesday evenings working through an agenda to having more meetings in the neighborhoods where we're rolling up our sleeves and actually beautifying parks, addressing issues in neighborhoods. And when we're out there showing the community the actual impact of our work, I also think that we will also then hear from people who would otherwise not get to participate in government about their concerns about their neighborhood. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and it's been a pleasure being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. We will continue with closing statements here. In the absence of Ryan Coonerty, thank you very much. Good luck with the midterms.
Thank you.
And because of the time we have available, what I'm going to say just as a prelude here, among the other questions that I had prepared, which I'm not going to ask you right now, some of the topics were the city's climate action plan and responding to the climate crisis in the city in general, about openness and accessibility, accountability in city procedures and meetings, and and several other things, but about managing the city's water resources and water system, and on and on. There are so many things you could talk about. So because of the amount of time we have available, and there are only 4 of you, I'm going to allow you to have 3 minutes each for a closing statement. I know you may have prepared less, but if you want to address any of those other questions or other things that are on the top of your mind, please do so. And I will start with you, Chris Krohn.
Thank you, Len. Just to talk a little bit about climate change. I don't think the city is necessarily prepared. I think most cities are not prepared. You would think a city like Santa Cruz would, with the kind of education that we have here and the concerns that are expressed by the university, and we have all these university students. I come from a Department of Environmental Studies, and when I first started there in 2004, we were actually thinking we could turn this tide back, and then a few years, 10 years later, it was mitigations. We're mitigating things, and a lot of the research folks I know on campus kind of sort of threw up their hands, and said we are on a path that we are going to. We've changed the climate, and we're gonna pay for that. And also, there's going to be we're going to be seeing the tornadoes we saw the other day in Santa Cruz. Gary Griggs has always said you better start preparing to move downtown Santa Cruz. Yesterday there was a report from the university in New Orleans that said New Orleans has to start prepare to move the city in the next 2 decades. They're very serious about this. New Orleans is going to be underwater. It already is underwater. It's in a bowl, and there's water all around, and they got to continually pump it out. As far going to your next question, openness in government. I think that we could be a lot more open in government. I think we're making too many decisions in closed session. I think that's why we have all of these, big buildings going up. I think they fast-tracked many of them. I also believe that this one developer-only Zoom meeting has really made its mark on getting these projects through without much public input. So I would, bring back if developers want to get a project through, they have to, the city council's preparing for the opposite. That there's not going to be any meetings. There's not going to be any public meetings on projects in the future, and it's going to totally be a ministerial permit that they're going to get. Managing the city's water resources. We're not doing. This is a great conserving community. We proved this. We were written up in the New York Times back in 2012, I think it was, or something. It's amazing what we can do with conservation measures. I think it was before that even. And we've done a great job. Our water is not from the Great Water Project in California. It is from, we have groundwater and we have rainwater, and we have to live within our limits. I was glad to hear Gillian Greensite say in another show that we have a carrying capacity, and right, we have a certain carrying capacity in Santa Cruz, and we can only have so many people being here. That's I don't know if that responds to your question, to your concerns or not, but I see I'm out of time.
Yes,
so.
And thank you very much. I just in case you needed more subject matter for your closing statement. So thank you.
I do have a closing statement too. So.
Oh, you do.
But go ahead. It's okay.
Well, let's see what happens.
Respond.
Here. Gillian Greensite.
Yes, could you clarify before you set my timer? I thought this was our closing statement.
This is your closing
this
statement.
Is.
I'm sorry. I just wanted, because I had told you initially
yes.
it would be less time, I wanted to mention what other questions I had hoped to have time for, but we don't. So there you are.
Thank you very much. I don't think it's being taken seriously enough. This, what I mentioned before about the city staff putting the building on the fast track, and any suggestion that we can make these 8-story, 6-story buildings that butt up onto existing neighborhoods, that we can do something about that. We can't. We can't, and that's giving people false hope. If you sit through the community meetings with the people there who are going to be in the shade, have their privacy gone, no parking, they're almost in tears. And I don't think that our council nor their staff, top staff, is taking it seriously. And if you want a measure of things, the Economic Development Department and Housing and the City Managers Department have doubled their staff and doubled their budget in the same time period that the City Parks Department has been cut by 30%. Now, that's priorities. And I think that needs turning around. And that takes a different vision going in. And I've quite close contact with our workers, our low-income workers, all Spanish-speaking, some of them without papers, who are leaving. I mean, I'm talking about 1 or 2. They're leaving. And they're not getting this affordable housing. We talk a lot about a workforce and housing for workers. It's not happening. And the city does not keep data so that we can, as a community, talk about this. It's lip service. So that sort of motivates me. In terms of the environment, it's definitely taken a back seat. The Parks Department being cut is an example. We used to have park rangers who'd go into the parks and, make sure things were good and etc. They're gone, all gone. That has to change. So at a budget time, I would be raising these issues. But right now, it's build, baby, build. And that is not going to lower the cost of housing. Because if we build all affordable housing, they don't pay any property tax. Who's going to suffer? Schools and the county, who get the majority of property taxes. City only gets a little bit. So something has to be turned around. This has to be turned around at City Hall. And I get very impatient with abstract quotes about, yes, we can help the neighbours and redesign. No, our staff is heading in, no public hearings, build more than we're required to. I'll stop there because I'm out of time, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Ami Chen-Mills.
Thank you. You mentioned at the top of the hour that we were not to say somebody's in bed with somebody, and I don't know who's in bed with who, but I do think that the campaign finance issue is important. Are you saying we can't speak about campaign finance? Because for me, that's a very progressive issue.
Yes, you can, as long as you don't have any attacks on people's personality or morals.
No, of course not. No, I've been trying to be very careful, but in this race, 4 of us have accepted campaign expenditure limits, and Ryan Coonerty has not. I have accepted them, and Ryan Coonerty is also being funded by a huge variety of real estate and development interests, and works as a consultant to developers. That's all in the 700 forms that have been filed about these campaigns. And that's important to me. Another thing that's personally important to me is when Ryan says, and I'm concerned because I'm also a constituent, that the best way to push back against authoritarianism or fascism at the federal level is to show that progressive government works. That's exactly what Matt Mahan says, who is running for governor. I just heard him say it at the debate. And Ryan works for Matt Mahan, and also has endorsed Matt Mahan, who's likely to be a spoiler and push us into 2 Republicans in the runoff. And Matt Mahan is funded by Palantir money, Mithril money. So I am, as a person of color, it's not okay to say, let's just see how progressive government works, and that's it. We have immigrants and transgender people and all sorts of people who are at risk in our community. It's not just about making our parks more beautiful and showing that that's what works. What works is when we're looking out for people who are people that we may not identify with. And that, I think, is a true progressive value. It's something I care about a lot. It's one of the reasons that I am running. As for climate, I've been a climate activist for 10 years now. I care very much about the trees. I care very much about the wildlands. And I want us to start to organize in our communities to prepare for wildfires and to prepare for federal disasters like ice incursions that may be coming our way. I want us to have, micro grants for communities to get together and get to know each other, possibly to apply for some kind of a microgrid situation where we have power when the power goes out. We really need to be much more awake to what's happening and alert to what's happening. It is very relevant to so many of our lives. And I hear that from the students that I work with at the university. They were very, very relieved when we got the flock cameras out. And to have someone come in and say, I'm going to bring back ALPRs, to me is horrifying under an authoritarian administration who could easily put out an executive order and say, hey, we now need all the data from all of these cameras across the country. So I think that the situation is much more serious than some people have said. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. And Joy Schendeldecker.
Thank you. I'm running for mayor because I believe that the decisions we make now are going to impact us for generations to come, just like we are dealing now with decisions that have been made in generations past about infrastructure, just even as simple as the layout of our roads. I think that the decisions that we're making now are going to impact who gets to live here, who gets to be at home here. as I mentioned at the top of the hour, I'm in my day-to-day work, I'm on the front lines of our housing and human services systems. I work in a local shelter program, 2 different programs where I help oversee operations and support people in crisis. And what I see every day is how quickly people fall through the cracks when housing costs outpace incomes and when the systems struggle to coordinate. And when we don't invest early enough in prevention. So for me, the campaign's bringing different perspectives together, practical, on-the-ground experience, and a long-term vision for a city for all of us. So just to explain a little bit more about my major points, so keeping people housed. We need to invest much more in housing stability for starting with our renters, like I mentioned, that's more than half of our residents, but also for the homeowners that are housing cost burdened. Just because you own a home doesn't mean that your housing costs aren't making it hard to pay your other bills or to put gas in the car to get to work or afford childcare. So we know that the most effective way to address homelessness is to prevent it in the first place. It means stronger tenant protections, rental assistance, making sure people don't lose their housing over short-term crisis. That is far less costly than managing homelessness once people fall into it and getting people rehoused. The second thing is good jobs and fair wages. And I'm really, really proud to be endorsed by SEIU 521. That's our service employees union. That's the majority of our city workers, our boots on the ground workers. They are very concerned because there's been bloat at the top, a tripling of managerial and supervisor roles over the last 3 years, while there are ongoing vacancies for them and stagnant wages. So we need a much better deal for them. And I'm running out of time. I spoke too slowly. I should have done double time.
It's hard to do.
It is
and
hard.
We do have to stop,
Yeah.
but I want to thank all of you very much for being
Thank
here and
you,
taking
Len.
the time.
Thank you, Len.
Chris
Thank
Krohn, Ami Chen-Mills, Joy Schendeldecker,
Thank
and
you.
Gillian Greensite. And stay tuned. You're listening to KSQD.
And thanks to our timekeeper.
Yeah, thank you, Graham.
No problem.